Okay, get ready, because today we are going deep, really deep. We're talking about the deep biosphere, and honestly, this stuff is mind-blowing.
It really is.
We're talking about a hidden world right under our feet,
Yeah.
locked inside the Earth's crust.
And it's huge, massive.
Like how massive?
Imagine, if you will, twice the size of all the oceans combined, all teeming with life, microbial life, and a
Oh
biomass.
wait, twice the size of all the oceans combined.
Yeah, that's just for starters. And then the biomass, think 20 times greater than all the life, like all the plants and animals on the surface.
That's insane. I mean, we're talking about an entirely like a planet-sized ecosystem that we didn't even know existed until relatively recently.
Yeah, and this isn't like a lush rainforest down there.
Right, definitely not a tropical paradise.
These microbes are dealing with, well, how do I put this? Crushing pressure, scorching heat, no oxygen. We're talking extreme.
So, not exactly a place for a casual stroll. And how do they survive?
They've adapted, they've evolved over millions of years to thrive in these conditions. Some of them may even live for millions of years. Think about that.
Millions of years.
Right.
Wow, that's incredible. So how do we even start to wrap our heads around this? How do we explore this hidden world?
Well, our sources talk about a duck science drill.
Duck science drill, I like it.
Yeah, it's a way to visualize the layers, like we're drilling down through the earth.
Okay, let's drill. Take us down.
All right, so we're starting at the surface. Soil, it's teeming with life, plants, animals.
Yeah, that's familiar territory. Lots of activity, lots of biomass being generated every year.
Right, a zone of incredible productivity. Okay, now we keep drilling, we go deeper, we hit the water table.
Water table. Okay, so now we're in a zone where groundwater saturates the earth.
Yeah, exactly. And get this area is still being influenced by the last ice age.
Really?
Yeah.
So temperatures down there can be, what, pretty chilly?
Chile, yeah. Life's a bit less abundant, but it's still there, scavenging, adapting.
Tough little guys. So this zone, it's like a transition zone, leading us to the real hardcore stuff, the deep biosphere.
You got it. And the gateway to this hidden world, well, that's Bedrock.
Bedrock, okay. Now, I always thought of bedrock as just solid rock, the end of the line.
You'd think so, right? But here's the thing, it's actually full of cracks and voids, pores, and these are filled with, guess what? Water.
Water. So even solid rock has, like, a network of tiny channels and cavities that's not really solid at all.
Right, and that creates a surprisingly vast habitat for, you guessed it, microbial life.
So we've got this hidden network of water within solid rock, and that's where things start to get really interesting. And I know as we go deeper into the bedrock, the heat and pressure, well, they get extreme. But how extreme are we talking?
Extreme. Just to give you an idea, at 400 meters down, the pressure is like being on the surface of Venus.
Whoa, Venus, that's intense.
Yeah, that's like the weight of a car balanced on your fingertip.
Okay, I'm starting to get a sense of the scale here.
But we're going deeper, much deeper.
How deep?
Almost 4 kilometers down.
4 kilometers. That's like deeper than the Burj Khalifa is tall.
And that's where we find the real mind-boggling conditions.
Okay, paint me a picture. What's it like down there?
Imagine the weight of tens of thousands of tons of solid rock pressing down on you.
I'm already feeling claustrophobic.
That's the kind of pressure. It's like the pressure at the bottom of the Mariana Trench.
The deepest part of the ocean.
Yeah.
Okay, that's definitely not a place for a casual swim. What about the temperature?
Scorching. Average temperature at that depth, about 120 degrees Celsius.
120, that's boiling hot.
Fueled by the heat from Earth's formation and the decay of radioactive elements. And don't forget, no oxygen. Some areas even have extreme salt.
So we're talking about a truly alien environment. But you said life thrives down there. How is that even possible?
Well, remember those cracks and voids we talked about? They form a massive interconnected network throughout the bedrock. And that creates, well, habitat for microbes on a planetary scale.
So they've carved out a living in these tiny pockets of water within the rock. It's amazing.
It is. And it's not a static environment. It's dynamic, constantly changing. We call it rock weather.
Rock weather. I like that. Tell me more.
Just like our atmosphere, right? It's constantly changing, creating weather patterns.
Right. Wind, rain, storms.
Exactly. Well, the deep biosphere has its own kind of weather. Submerged mountain ranges shift, Continents collide, earthquakes, they all create new fissures, passageways. It's a constant process of creation and destruction shaping these microbial habitats.
So we've got this harsh, dynamic, constantly changing environment. That's where these microbes call home. So I'm guessing we're not talking about your average, everyday microbe.
Oh no, these are extremophiles, microbes with incredible adaptations. They don't just survive down
They thrive.
They thrive.
And that's what I want to hear about. Let's talk about these extremophiles.
So let's talk about some of these extremophiles. One remarkable example is Dulur Rutus audaxviator.
Try saying that 3 times fast.
I know, right?
Mm.
It's a bacterium, and it's a real survivor, discovered about 2 kilometers below the surface.
2 kilometers down. That's deep.
Yeah, in a South African gold mine, living in complete isolation.
Complete isolation. So, no contact with the outside world at all.
None. And the amazing thing is, it creates its own food.
Wait, creates its own food? How's that even possible?
So it uses chemical energy, right, from the rocks around it, and it converts carbon or sulfur into nutrients. It doesn't need sunlight. It doesn't need other organisms.
So it's like a completely self-contained ecosystem,
Yeah.
all in one tiny bacterium.
Exactly. It's totally independent. But of course, resources down there can be scarce,
Yeah.
and things can get, well, even tougher.
Right, so how does it deal with that?
It has this, I guess you could call it a suicide survival strategy.
Suicide survival. Okay, that sounds a bit dramatic.
It is. So the bacterium, it divides into 2 parts, a larger one and a smaller one. And then the larger part, it engulfs the smaller one.
Whoa, it eats itself.
Well, sort of. And then the outer cell, it sheds its water and forms this tough endospore.
Endospore, okay.
Yeah, it's like a protective shell. And it can withstand incredible extremes. Temperature, radiation, even the vacuum of space.
So the larger part sacrifices itself to protect the smaller part. That is dramatic.
It is. And that endospore, it can basically just float around for maybe thousands of years until it finds a more favorable environment. And then it reawakens and starts the cycle all over again.
Wow, a microbial time traveler. Incredible. So we've got this lone wolf bacterium surviving on its own. But I'm guessing not all extremophiles go it alone, right? What about the ones who prefer a bit of company?
You're right. Many microbes, they prefer a more communal approach. That's where we get microbial consortia.
Microbial Consortium.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
sounds interesting.
Yeah. Think of it as teamwork for survival. Different types of microbes band together. They form biofilms.
Biofilms, like those slimy things you find, in your shower.
Kind of, but on a microscopic scale. They cling to surfaces within the rock, and it creates like a protected environment inside.
Okay, so they're huddled together for safety. And then what?
Well, within the biofilm, each type of microbe specializes in a specific metabolic process.
Oh, so they've got their own little jobs. It's like a microscopic city.
Exactly. Division of labor, maximizing their chances of survival.
I love that. So what kind of jobs are we talking about here?
Well, remember how we talked about the lack of oxygen down there?
Right.
Well, some microbes, they've adapted to breathe other things, like nitrogen or iron. Others, they consume methane, which comes from geological processes.
Okay. And they're all working together, each
Yeah.
doing their part. And what about, you mentioned earlier that some of these microbes might be living forever. How does that work?
It's all about slowing down, conserving energy. They live life in the slow lane.
Slow lane. How slow are we talking?
Their metabolic rate can be 1,000,000 times slower than microbes on the surface.
1,000,000 times slower.
Wow.
Seriously.
It's mind-blowing. It's like they're in suspended animation, just waiting for resources to become available.
And when that happens?
They spring to life, reproduce, take advantage, and then it's back to slow motion, waiting for the next opportunity.
A feast or famine lifestyle.
Yeah.
But on a geological timescale. It's amazing. And we can't forget about the predators, right? You mentioned something about that.
That's right. We found evidence of multicellular organisms like worms.
Worms.
Yep.
Living kilometers beneath the surface.
Yep, they feed on those microbes we've been talking about.
So even in this extreme environment, there's a whole food chain.
Exactly. It's more complex than we ever imagined. It's a whole ecosystem down there, and we're just starting to understand it.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
It really is. But how do we even study this? I mean, how do you get samples from kilometers beneath the surface?
That's a challenge, that's for sure. Contamination is a big issue.
Right. If you're bringing stuff up from that deep, how do you know what's from down there and what came from the surface?
Exactly. And then there's the challenge of recreating those conditions in the lab.
Yeah, I mean, how do you replicate the pressure of a mountain? The boiling hot water.
It's tough, but scientists are coming up with some incredible techniques. We're studying microbes from deep mines, analyzing their genetic material, And we're developing ways to collect samples from deep drilling projects while minimizing contamination.
So it's like a whole new frontier of science. And why should we care? What's the point of all this? What does it mean for us up here on the surface?
It's a great question, and it leads us to one of the most profound implications of this whole thing. If life can thrive in these extreme conditions here on Earth, then, well, it opens up a whole new world of possibilities.
You like life on other planets.
Exactly. If microbes can survive in the crushing pressure, the heat, the lack of sunlight in Earth's deep biosphere, then similar environments on other planets, other moons, well, they could also harbor life.
It really makes you think. We think we know so much about our planet, but then we find this whole other world teeming with life right under our noses, well, under our feet, I guess, and it completely changes everything.
It does. It makes you realize how much we still have to learn.
Exactly. You mentioned earlier that there could be, what, 10 potential deep biospheres in our solar system alone?
At least 10, yeah. And those are just the ones we know about.
Wow. So where should we be looking? What are some of the hot spots, so to speak?
Well, one place that really has scientists excited is Europa, one of Jupiter's moons.
Europa, okay. I know it's covered in ice, but I've heard there might be an ocean underneath.
That's right, a huge ocean, possibly bigger than all of Earth's oceans combined.
No way. And it's liquid water?
Liquid water, kept warm by tidal forces from Jupiter's gravity.
Fascinating. So what's the connection to the deep biosphere?
Well, scientists believe that ocean could harbor a deep biosphere very similar to Earth's.
Really? Like with microbes and everything?
Exactly. Thriving around hydrothermal vents on the ocean floor.
Hydrothermal vents. Those are like underwater volcanoes, right?
That's a good way to think about it.
Yeah.
They release chemicals like hydrogen sulfide, which some microbes can actually use as a source of energy.
Because they don't need sunlight?
Nope. They can exist in complete darkness.
Wow, that's amazing. So life on Europa could be clustered around these vents,
Right.
deep beneath the ice.
That's the idea. And it's not just Europa. There's also Enceladus, a moon of Saturn.
Enceladus, that's a much smaller moon, right?
Much smaller, yeah. But it has these incredible geysers that erupt from its south polar region, spewing water vapor and ice particles hundreds of kilometers into space.
Geysers. Seriously, why? What's causing that?
Well, it seems there's a subsurface ocean on Enceladus, too.
Really? Another ocean?
And the geysers suggest there's hydrothermal activity down there.
So like Europa, Enceladus could have its own deep biosphere powered by these underwater volcanoes.
It's definitely a possibility.
Mind-blowing. So we've got these two moons, Europa and Enceladus, both potentially harboring life in their deep oceans. It just shows, how much we still have to explore even in our own solar system.
Absolutely. And think about it, we're just starting to understand our own deep biosphere. Who knows what else is out there?
Right, it's like a whole new frontier of science is opening up, thanks to the deep biosphere.
It really is. And it's not just about discovering new life forms. It's about expanding our understanding of what life is, where it can exist, and how it adapts to the most extreme conditions.
It's a whole new way of looking at the universe. And who knows, maybe someday we'll find evidence of life in those deep biospheres on Europa, Enceladus, or even further out.
It's an exciting time to be a scientist, that's for sure. The deep biosphere has given us a whole new set of questions to ask, and I can't wait to see what answers we uncover in the years to come.
Me too. This deep dive has been an incredible journey. From the depth of our own planet to the possibility of life on other worlds, it's really been a mind-expanding experience, and I hope our listeners are feeling just as inspired as I am. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the amazing world of the deep biosphere. Until next time, keep exploring.